Am I audible now? Yes, yes. So now let us start with this formal function, and it's really great pleasure, my dear Dr. Jitu, Dr. Bakul Parekh, if he is there, Dr. Vijay Evle, Dr. Morulwar, every senior person from Navi Mumbai IIP, then our President Maharashtra State, Dr. Pandrikar, Sadachar, all my EB members, Central IIP as well as Maharashtra IIP, dignitaries and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not very much prepared for this speech, and just I am the opening batsman. But it's really pleasure to be all the time. It's pleasure to be with Navi Mumbai members as such, because I am from Raigad district. I am from Mahad, and I always look Navi Mumbai as our elder brother. Whenever we need some help, some guidance, whatever need, we look to you all. Let me tell you very clearly that I owe a lot to Navi Mumbai branch, because let me tell you that my career in IIP and my social career, my social services started not from Mahad, not from Alibag, but from Navi Mumbai, because I know your Bhishma Pitamaha, Dr. Moralwar invited me one time, probably Evely was some organizing secretary or organizer of this MBCon, and for the first time I talked in Navi Mumbai on Chala Mulam Ghaduya, and my all project in Maharashtra started from Navi Mumbai. So I always over to Navi Mumbai candidate. As far as these functions are concerned, I know, Dr. Jitu, am I audible?
Yes,
Yes. I have attended your function and had your creativity. Then I attended one of the function, probably Shilpa Roskar and everybody presented that, and all past presents. And again, I am very much impressed with that creativity. Then I attended few seminars, and Dr. Jitu and all your team, please accept my compliments for all the things which you are doing at Navi Mumbai. I always say that Navi Mumbai is our आदर्श. Navi Mumbai जो करते हो अपन ने करना चाहिए. अगर इतना भी जम गया तो बहुत कुछ है. So Jitu, I have seen your hard work. I have seen your creativity. I have seen everything. And for all these things, for this I congratulate you for creating this your YouTube channel. And second thing, I wish you best luck for all your functions. Please, I know that we are a host and we are organizing this Mahapadicon next year. We reschedule that, and it's my sincere will and wish that all members, all office bearers, members, including senior persons like Moralwar, Dr. Evely should be with us. I wish you best luck, and I wish you best luck for the opening ceremony of this YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Dr. Jayat Pandharikar sir to say 2 words.
Very good evening to one and all. Vice President of CIP, Dr. Shekhar sir, past IIP President, Dr. Vijay Evle sir, and office bearers of Navi Mumbai, Dr. Parmanand, CIP Executive, Dr. Sadachar, and all the respected members of Navi Mumbai. The name itself says Navi Mumbai. It's everything is new for them, new concepts, Navi Asha, Navi Akanksha, नवी आयडियाज, नवे कन्सेप्ट्स आणि सर्व काही नवीन नवीन तिथूनच निघतं असं मला म्हणा हरकत नाहीये. सो इवन विथ दिस एज फार एज YouTube channel is concerned, so Navi Mumbai has come up with this new idea of their own YouTube channel, and I congratulate Team Navi Mumbai, especially Dr. Jitendra Gawane. I know because they are conducting webinars every Thursday and every Sunday with some innovative ideas and innovative theme. I have attended 2-3 seminars. Last seminar I attended with Dr. Evle sir and Dr. Dhanya madam. So it was excellent webinar, and I really once again congratulate Jitendra and all the Navi Mumbai IIP team for their every time as a new concept, new work. I once again congratulate Dr. Jitendra and Navi Mumbai IIP for inauguration of this YouTube channel, which is exclusively they have created, and they have dedicated this channel for what Jitendra has told me, for public health also. And I must once again wish best wishes for this, and heartiest congratulations once again to one and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for encouraging words. I request Dr. Parmanand sir, Central IIP B member, bless us with few words. Unmute.
It's nice to be there in the English country, a unique thing which Mumbai has started. Good stalwarts like Moralwar sir and Vijay Evle sir and Upendra to guide and definitely on dynamic team under the leadership of Jitendra and Satish. I know they will, and they are conducting very well and very good seminars every week, and they will make a benchmark in India with this new thing, and we all will learn from this. I congratulate the entire team of New Mumbai IIP and give them all the best for future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Maharashtra IIP Secretary Dr. Sadachar sir to bless us with a few words.
Unmute करा sir. Unmute करा sir.
Unmute kara, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jitendra sir. Respected dignitaries of all present, Dr. Bakul Parekh sir, Dr. Jain sir, Vijay Evle sir, Dr. Davadkar sir. I remember when I was reporting the Maharashtra activity report last year, that time Navi Mumbai, I saw Navi Mumbai has done every ideal activity whichever Central IIP has prescribed in their pro forma. So the thing itself indicates that how Navi Mumbai works, and it's actually an inspiration for all our Maharashtra branches, how a branch should work in IIP, and how the benchmark should be, how the standard protocols of activities that being very much keenly followed by your branch, definitely. And I also see the many people present here today for this function. That is also a unity that I see in your branch, and that should be inculcated in every branch, and so that our IIP will definitely achieve new heights. Thanks, and I congratulate all of you, Navi Mumbai people. It's a definitely inspiring program. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I request Dr. Moralwar sir. Sir, is there?
Right there.
Yes.
Sir, please.
Good evening, friends and members from the Central IIP, members from the Maharashtra State IIP, our Navi Mumbai IIP, office bearers, Vijay, Upendra, and Dr. Parmanand from Thane. It's a moment of happiness that we are achieving one more milestone today, and I think this is a growing branch, and we hope to achieve one by one more milestones in our branch. And I think this is a cognitive development which is happening very fast in our branch. I wish you best of luck. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Evle sir, please bless us.
Very good evening, the IIP President Dr. Bakul Parekh, IIP Upadhyaksha Dr. Shekhar Dabadkar, Maharashtra State President Dr. Jain, and the Secretary Dr. Sadachar, my dear friend and the IIP EB member Parmanand, and my dear lovely family members from IIP Navi Mumbai. What a day it is. I mean, Dr. Moralwar would remember when we started the branch, had an STD call to Mumbai, and our circle used to be sent to a boy, handwritten circulars or typewritten circulars. And today we are launching a YouTube channel. And I mean, nothing more can be more gratifying than see, generation after generation, working for the branch and taking it to, higher and higher heights, and, setting up new benchmarks. It's really a wonderful thing, and I'm absolutely have no iota of doubt that this young brigade, which is led by Jitendra and Satish Shahane, would set lot many new records in the days to come. And I would only say that the IIP in Mumbai has a lot of talent, and each and every member has been, with every passing month is coming out with something or the other, and it is so heartening to see. The only dream that I have now is that there will be more and more leaders from Navi Mumbai who would be leading the central IIP. And I'm sure we have Dr. Upendra Kinjavdekar, and it's my dream to see my younger brother, Dr. Jitendra Gavane, once leading the central IIP also. So, I mean, such a great team of hardworking and talented youngsters that are really carrying the branch to the heights. I congratulate once again and hope to see many more first. Thank you once again for the central IIP and state IIP officers for joining.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ram.
I request Upendra sir to say a few words.
Okay. Good evening, friends. Unfortunately, I'm right now in Apollo with my one of very close friends' mother. She had a fractured neck femur, so trying to settle her down. But it's really a proud moment, and I could not miss this opportunity. So first and foremost, congratulations to Dr. Jitendra, Dr. Vikram, who have taken a great efforts in launching this. As Dr. Yevle said, it's a dream come true for Navi Mumbai. The branch which started with handful of members by Dr. Moralwar and Dr. Yevle, and now it is created its own name all over the country, not only in Maharashtra, but everybody talks in great spirits about Navi Mumbai. And the only thing that we very important and which is special about Navi Mumbai, there is no comparison. We do not compare, and whatever we compare is with ourselves, our past performance. So that is the best way to go ahead, and that's how I think technology, as we have said, that it's going to be the future. And it is going to be here. How best we can utilize it for dissemination of knowledge, not only amongst our peers, but also for our patients, that is to be learned. And I'm sure Dr. Jitendra and his team will make full use of this new YouTube channel, which is being launched. And my best wishes always, I'm part of it. So it's great. And I'm really honored to have the President, Dr. Bakul Parekh, our dear Vice President, Dr. Shekhar, Dr. Jain, Dr. Sadachar, entire Maharashtra and Central IIP team standing with us. So that's a great sight to see. Thank you very much and all the best for Navi Mumbai Association of Pediatrics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, it is Bakul Parekh sir's vision and DI platform which motivated us to come up with the YouTube channel. Bakul sir, now if you can say a few words, if you can, because we can see you now, sir. Sir, unmute karo, sir. Unmute कीजिए.
ठीक आहे. आणि असं करूया आपण जरा थोडा डिटूर करू. मी सांगितलं ना तुम्हाला खारघरला गाडी मी सोडतो आणि मग येतो तुमच्या. माझे मिसेस आणखी मुलगी इकडे बसेल.
पण मग हवा तरी काहीतरी आहे की नाही हवेला?
हवेसाठी आहे का?
येतो सर. आवाज अनम्यूट होत नाही.
Satish sir. Satish sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It's okay, sir. Bakul sir, you have tried. I thank from on behalf of Navi Mumbai IIP to everyone who has accepted our invitation for inauguration function, and we are very delightful to have everybody on one platform. And this was a possibility. This is possible because of the vision of Dr. Bakul Parekh. Because initially in lockdown, we thought now our knowledge, how to share now, how to go ahead with the seminars, how to go ahead with the our new concepts. But when Dr. Bakul Parekh has started and he has shown the knowledge has no obstacle, we can share the knowledge even with this great visionary, each and every one. We have learned over 3 months. We have imbibed more Nelson than in last 3 months than what we had in last 10 years. So thank you very much for that imbibing or showing the path. And second, I would like to really thank Dr. Dabadkar, who has taken very wonderful sessions for parents as well as students, and even for the pediatrician to teach how to actually cope up with the stress with the children. They have their own problems. We have learned the visions of Dr. Dabadkar sir. I'm really grateful to him also, and I like to really thank to Dr. Jayant Pandarikar sir, who is the President Maharashtra IIP, then Secretary Dr. Sadachar, who is a very within a short span he has accepted our invitation. And I really thank Dr. Parman sir, who has been always a guiding force for us to each and every new activity, new concept of New Mumbai, even for our own problems also. He's always there. From our own branch, it's like a what is called as a boosters, what is called immuno boosters for us. Dr. Borova sir, Dr. Evle sir, Dr. Upendra sir. We have to just ask him what to do and how we go ahead. They are always there to help and also guide us about the new concept and how to tackle the problems that also they will tell. I really thank all of them and even all the participants. I would say Vikram has done a magic. His hands are not only on the pens or for patients or each and every one, but it's only or for the apps and programs also. Like he has within a short 48 hours, he said we can do it, and he has done it. And I really congratulate him. And Dr. Jitendra always as a visionary one, our solid rock star or pillar who is always there for any problem. Even in the night also, we can call him at 12 o'clock. There is no problem. Like we have got wonderful president and many supporters with us. I really thank all of them. And I, with the this introduction, thanks, I request Dr. Mangai to start our first session on digital platform.
For that,
Sir is now able to visible. I think he may able to speak something.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
sir.
Thank
Yes, sir.
you.
Thank you.
Yes, Vijay, Upendra, all I can see you now.
So nice to see you. Yeah.
Sir, Lonavala में
Thank you
जाके
very much
बैठे
for inviting me and all the best.
Thank you.
Vikram,
Thank
sir, Bakul sir is here.
Jitendra, it's okay. Continue with your program.
Just a minute, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And this quiz. Let me see how many of you get this finger signs right. We are on a digital platform, so I would not be able to hear your answers. So I'll be the one giving the answers. But still, let's take the quiz. Okay. So this is Congress. Great. As in thumbs up to Vikram for today's making this possible. Voting, sign of victory, and coming back again to this little finger. This little finger is the gesture that we used to frequently use on a rainy day to bail us out for a toilet break from school or from other places. Most of us would associate with this little finger. Now, don't take this little finger too lightly. It is on this little finger that the young Krishna or Bal Krishna lifted the Govardhan Parvat, the heavy Govardhan Parvat, and saved the village. As pediatricians, let us just imagine our young children as this young Krishna and the little finger as those aneuretic children, as those children who have this habit of bedwetting. And let us for once imagine that the burden of bedwetting, the trauma that they are lifting, is it nothing less than the Govardhan Parvat? I would say the trauma that these children carry not for a few days like Krishna did, but these children who have this habit of bedwetting carry this trauma and the burden of bedwetting and the guilt, fear associated with it for many, many years in their childhood, and some of them even into their adulthood. We are here to talk on bedwetting. Coming back again to a rainy day, playing or getting wet in the rains is fun, joy, happiness, and for some of us, even romantic. But getting wet in the bed is not. Getting wet in the bed is shame, guilt, fear, and helplessness. Helplessness on the part of the child because the child does not want to wet the bed but is helpless, and helplessness in helplessness of the parents because the parents want to help the child overcome this habit but are helpless. Why? Because many times they are not aware of how to seek help, where to seek help, or even whether help is needed. Most of them have been told that the child will overcome this habit in due course. But is it that? No. Today I will be talking so that we can help our little children and the parents overcome this habit of bedwetting. Broadly, my talk will be to know what is enuresis, the pathophysiology, assessment and evaluation, and finally the management. According to the International Children's Continence Society, nocturnal enuresis is defined as a condition of intermittent incontinence that occurs during sleep for a period of at least 3 months in children aged 5 years. Now, coming to the classification, nocturnal enuresis is broadly divided into the monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis and non-monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis. As the name suggests, the monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis has only one symptom. It's a monosymptom. That is, these children only have the habit of bedwetting in the night. Whereas the non-monosymptomatic children, along with bedwetting in the night, also wet the bed during sleep in the daytime and also have other lower urinary tract symptoms like frequency, urgency, poor stream. So these two categories are further divided, we can divide this into primary or secondary nocturnal enuresis. Most of us know that primary enuresis is the group of children who have never achieved sustained dryness for a period of at least 6 months, whereas secondary nocturnal enuresis is that group which had achieved dryness for more than 6 months, but then again these children start wetting the bed. Now, coming to some epidemiology and some statistics. Well, the statistics of bedwetting is a little like our corona statistics. The actual number of corona cases which are out there in the community is far more than the reported cases or the cases who actually come to a hospital and seek medical advice. Similarly, the statistics of bedwetting in this community is far more than the actual number of parents or children who actually seek medical advice or who come to us. Not a lot of work has not been done in India, but whatever few studies that have been done on Indian children give a prevalence rate of 7.6% to 16% bedwetting in India. A study which has been done in JJ gives a prevalence rate of 14%, whereas worldwide studies show that 5 to 10% of 7-year-olds wet the bed. This incidence comes down to 3% in teenagers and then further to 1%. But 1% still persists in adults, and some of them carry even it to adulthood and struggle with coping with it. Coming to the male and female ratio, the males are 1.5 to 2 times more prone to this habit of bedwetting than females. Here again, the female sex is definitely better than the male sex, and God has made it a better counterpart or than the male part. Okay. Now, when I look at these statistics, I wondered if the prevalence is 5 to 10%. Let's take an average 10% for Indian children, which is comparable with the prevalence of diseases like ADHD or constipation, and parents of ADHD and constipation children do come to us for this, why don't we see so many children in our OPD practice every day? So if I were to say see 100 patients, or if I were to take an example of our senior pediatricians who see 100 patients in a day, and if I have to take this age group as comprising of around 40% of the 100 patients of the OPD practice, I would assume that they should be seeing at least 3 to 4 patients of enuresis every single day. But here we have to really think, are we seeing these children? Are we diagnosing them? Or are we missing these children? One reason for missing is we don't actively ask this history to the parents. Another reason for missing is that parents also don't come to us. Why don't they come to us? Most of the children whom we know, after the main complaints of fever and everything is over, they tell this, or they come to us to seek advice when they have to go out for a family function or the child has to attend a camp. That is when they come and tell us about bedwetting. Now, let us ponder a little why don't parents come to us for this reason as the primary complaint? Like we all know, bedwetting is not a somatic complaint. It does not cause pain, it does not cause fever, it does not cause physical discomfort. Reasons with which parents bring their child to us. But what the parents don't see here, that this condition causes a lot of mental agony. The self-esteem of the child is low. The child lives in a constant fear that his friends will find out about this habit and will ridicule him, and the guilt stays on. A lot of research says that bedwetting has been seen as the third most traumatic event in a child's life after divorce and parental fighting. This experience is considered worse than even being teased or even being excluded from the peer group. Now, when the trauma of this is so much, we really need to address bedwetting more actively, and we really need to help our children to become confident adults and live a good quality of life, unlike carry and cope and try to cope this even into adulthood and land up with our in adulthood with our psychologist colleagues still trying to cope up with this disease. So let's start addressing bedwetting. Coming to pathophysiology, before I take you through the pathophysiology of bedwetting, let us in short revise the physiology of micturition. Now, we all know that the bladder filling occurs when the detrusor muscle is relaxed. When the detrusor muscle is relaxed, the sphincters are contracted. This is the filling phase of the bladder. It comes under the sympathetic control. And the parasympathetic phase leads to the voiding phase, where the detrusor muscle contracts and the urethral sphincter relaxes. The somatic nerve, which is responsible for this, is the pudendal nerve, which helps us to voluntarily contract the pelvic floor and the external sphincter and stop the process of micturition. The higher centers are pons and the cortex. The impulses from here are mostly inhibitory. That means if the conditions are not good for voiding, they send an inhibitory impulse to the bladder, which override the urge to pass urine. So, and in short, let us also see the developmental milestones. In infancy, it's a spontaneous process. By the age of 1 to 2 years, there is awareness of bladder filling, but this cortical inhibitory control is achieved only by 5 years. That is, by 5 years, a child can be dry by day and by night. And by 6 years, the child even has the ability to void even when the bladder is not full. So toilet training, achievement is of conscious bladder control is typically around 2 to 4 years. That is when we also advise parents to start toilet training at 2 to 4 years. Coming to the pathophysiology of bedwetting. Bedwetting the causes of bedwetting is a complex interplay of multiple factors. There is an abnormal circadian rhythm of antidiuretic hormone secretion. There are other psychosomatic manifestations and conditions that coexist with bedwetting. There is a defect in the arousal mechanism. That is, these children are difficult to be aroused from sleep. There is bladder detrusor, the muscle overactivity or a hyperactive bladder wall, splinter dysfunctions. Sometimes we also see small bladder capacity, genetic disposition. We know that parents, parents who bedwet, the children have a higher incidence of bedwetting in them. Developmental delay, which also is a cause and can coexist with bedwetting. Now, when we come to the causes, let me first talk about the three main causes of bedwetting. So, bedwetting, if I have to see, is because of three main reasons. One is nocturnal polyuria. Nocturnal polyuria is the lack of AVP, that is arginine vasopressin, or the antidiuretic hormone release, which typically in normal children is released at night and has a higher plasma level in the blood of normal children at night. This diurnal variation is not seen in children, so they pass large amount of urine and large amount of dilute urine at night. I will talk about in detail later, because nocturnal polyuria is a cause of enuresis in 75% cases of monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis. Coming to the other function, that is reduced nocturnal functional bladder capacity. In children who have a small bladder or an overactive bladder, a small bladder capacity, as we all know, if it is a small bladder, the amount of urine that it can hold is less. So these children have to go to pass urine frequently. These children also have this history of frequent urination or complaints of enuresis. That is, they fall into the non-monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis group. There is also impaired arousal from sleep in response to a full bladder. So a lot of studies has been done which clearly indicate that the acoustic signal or which is required for these children to arouse them from sleep in order to acknowledge a full bladder and go to pass urine is much higher than seen in normal children. Coming in detail to what is nocturnal polyuria, like I said, it is due to lack of vasopressin release at night, which leads to increased urine production. It is typically defined as nocturnal urine production plus the first morning void on a night with enuresis, which equals to or is more than 130% of the expected bladder capacity for the child age. Now, in short, about what exactly is vasopressin. Vasopressin is antidiuretic hormone, which leads to water reabsorption from the distal convoluted tubules in the night, distal convoluted tubules in the kidney. This reabsorption of water leads to production of less urine which can be contained in the bladder in the night. Coming to how do we calculate the expected bladder capacity? So typically a 10-year-old child will have 10 into 30, that is 300 plus 30. So around the expected bladder capacity of a 10-year-old child is expected to be around 330 ml. I'll come to this, that why we are getting into this formula, because this formula in our assessment and management is very important to determine the cause of bedwetting and gives us a lot of information about the bladder capacity and the cause, which will help us in our treatment. Now, this formula is valid until the early teens when the adult capacity of 400 ml is used. Like I said before, nocturnal polyuria is a contributory factor in 75% of cases. There are various studies which have linked nocturnal polyuria to bedwetting. In these studies, typically the AVP levels, the plasma AVP levels have been studied. A 2 AM sample is collected along with urine samples, which also check for the urine osmolality, and the amount of the volume of urine passed by the child is also recorded. In a study by Abdel Fattah and al., he also did this study of the acoustic signal which is required to arouse these children. All these studies point out very clearly that the AVP levels in these aneuretic children is far less than what it is in a normal child. And Abdul Fateh, in his study in 2009, which was published in the Nephrology Journal, has said that these children suffer from an arousal defect as well. Let us understand this further because it is the most important cause of enuresis. Understanding it further, here is a pictorial depiction which will help us understand. The blue line is a normal child who does not have nocturnal polyuria, and the pink line denotes a child who wet the bed. Now, if we were to study the plasma AVP levels in a normal child, we see that during daytime, the levels are low, whereas in a nighttime, the AVP levels in the plasma increase. But in an aneuretic child, there is not much difference between the daytime and the nighttime levels of the plasma AVP. Coming to urine osmolality, because these children, because the AVP levels are high, the urine osmolality, the normal children have concentrated urine and high urine osmolality, whereas the aneuretic children pass dilute urine. Coming to the volume of urine passed by a normal child at night is much less as compared to the pink line, showing that the volume of urine passed by an aneuretic child is way higher than what a normal child. That means the urine production in a aneuretic child is much higher at night than a normal child. What is significant is here, if you see a normal child has huge variations, that the blue line has huge variations between daytime values of all the three parameters, whereas the aneuretic child, in an aneuretic child, all the three parameters are not much different. That is, there is no much difference in these parameters, whether it is a day or night. Now, also coming to genetics, like I said, family history is positive in 50% of cases. A study clearly indicated these genes to be the ENUR1 gene to be involved, and the gene location to be on the chromosome 12 and 13. Now, each child has a 44% risk of enuresis if one parent is aneuretic, but if both the parents are aneuretic, the risk increases to 77%. This statistics is also given in our Nelson. I'll be talking about the study which came to this also. Now, coming to some comorbidities or some conditions which coexist with enuresis. One of the most frequently seen psychiatric comorbidity is ADHD. ADHD children, enuresis is seen more in children who also suffer from ADHD. It's also seen in children who have psychiatric problems like low self-esteem or are suffering from depression. Constipation is an extremely common comorbidity especially seen in the non-monosymptomatic group. It is also associated with the monosymptomatic, but is mostly seen in the non-monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis. And treatment of constipation many times treats the cause of or relieves the child of enuresis in this group. Now, coming to sleep apnea. Sleep apnea, 50% of enuretic sleep apnea is the condition where the brain has to arouse and wake up the child again and again in response to a respiratory stimulus. Now, in these children, when the bladder sends an impulse up to the brain does not perceive that impulse. So it does not arouse, and hence bedwetting is more. Now, also another reason why bedwetting is more in the sleep apnea is because of this disordered breathing. The atrial natriuretic peptide is secreted more, which leads to more urine production. Treating sleep apnea would relieve most of these children of this habit. Coming to think, now why doesn't the brain wake the child up when the child is waking when the brain is waking the child for every apneic episode, why doesn't the brain wake the child up when the impulse to pass urine comes? If we were to just ask the brain कि उठाया क्यों नहीं भाई हमें सुसु करने के लिए, and the brain will, so just imagine if the brain asks you कि सुसु के लिए उठाऊं कि सांस लेने के लिए उठाऊं, so what is more important, सांस कि सुसु? Obviously the सांस. So these children have do not arouse from sleep and pass urine or are anuretics. Coming to some very interesting academic studies. This one is the one which I was talking about, which shows that the incidence of enuresis and also shows the percentage of children percentage of children who have the higher risk of developing enuresis when the parent is enuresis. Now, this study shows that the locus is on the chromosome 13 and another NU gene is on chromosome 12. So 12 and 13 are involved and genetics does play a role in enuresis. Coming to the second study, which is a comorbid condition, the children with enuresis had 2.88 times more chances of having ADHD as compared to those without enuresis. Why am I getting only some of these studies? Is because we see these children of ADHD or we see hyperactive children in our OPD. Whenever we see a hyperactive children, do we ask the history of enuresis? Coming to another study. Now, this study says that the urine calcium create ratio is elevated in patients having enuresis as compared to those who don't. We will come to this. We see many patients having hypercalciuria, and even a diet which is high in calcium can affect enuresis. I will come back to this when we talk about the management. Now, this study, which was a German study, which studies the quality of life, that is the health-related quality of life in this children, the German children, and was compared with Turkish children. This clearly demonstrates that enuresis negatively affects the health-related quality of life of children. The most affected domains that were studied and that the most affected domains which were found in the study was self-esteem, emotional well-being, and their relationship with family and friends. This value, the health-related quality of life value, was lower in non-primary or the secondary monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis, which also goes on to say that children who develop secondary nocturnal enuresis, their quality of life decreases, the health quality of life decreases, and this also indicated that the patients who have had partial response to treatment or have been completely treated, the values of the health-related quality of life increases. So, a good quality of life. So, to have a good quality of life, we really need to address this issue of enuresis in children. This study is an Indian study. I'm projecting it here. This will show the prevalence rate and the stress related to enuresis, and that stress also causes enuresis. This study is an Indian study done in Himachal Pradesh, where we can clearly see that the children whose parents are living separately, the incidences of enuresis is 41%, whereas the incidence of enuresis is high in children who have these variables, where the parents are living separately, who have poor academic performance, also have perianal itching or have worms, or have deep sleep apnea or have deep sleep. Enuresis is more common in these children. So, I think I have spoken enough about the importance of addressing this issue, and also about that we can't further wait and watch and the age-old thinking of let it be, I'll outgrow this habit in due time. We cannot let that happen. So we have to actively address this issue and actively treat our children for this issue. So coming to management, assessment and evaluation. Firstly, in the management of enuresis, in initial evaluation, history is of utmost importance. Like history is of importance in any case in pediatric practice or even in adult practice. So we start with the history. A history will help us determine whether it is primary enuresis or secondary enuresis. We will also know whether we need to really do any extra evaluation and gather enough information through the history to be able to choose the first line therapy. What is important is here, the history should be asked to the mother, the parents should be involved, but also the child has to be taken. The history from the child would involve what does the child feel about this, what are the other issues that the child faces, and will also address the psychiatric issues that the child faces. Unless if we just talk to a mother in the OPD, the child will feel left alone. You have to understand that this is a chronic illness, and as in any chronic illness, the cooperation and motivation of the child, the parent, and the entire parents, the grandparents and all, is of utmost importance, because it being a chronic issue, the chances of relapse is very common, the treatment is very long, sometimes may have a lot of failure till we finally achieve success. So the compliance from the child, the parents and grandparents is utmost important. Coming to history, typically what all will we ask a mother when she tells that my child bedwets? We will ask at what age getting start. Did the child ever have any dry period, like whether have any dry period of at least 6 months? Now, if the child wets the bed at night, how many times does he typically wet? Most of the mothers would also give us a time. 2 से 3 के में सुसु कर देता है. अगर मैंने नहीं उठाया तो 3 बजे बेड गीला रहता है. So they also know the number of times the child wets and also approximately the time at which the child wets the bed. We have to also ask the mother whether this child has any daytime symptoms, or when the child sleeps during the day, does he wet the bed at that time? Does the child have any symptoms of urgency, frequency, poor stream, an urge to repeatedly pass urine, or any signs of urinary tract infection? We have to also ask whether the child clears the bowel daily, and like we all know, constipation history does not typically come by asking रोज bathroom जाता है क्या, रोज potty करता है क्या? No, it has to be even more as to whether he goes every day, what is the consistency of the stool passed. Only when we deal with it, only when we ask, will we come to know whether. And it's a very simple, if we treat constipation, the enuresis is treated. So anything, yes. Apart from this, we need to find out the dietary habits of the child, the amount of water that the child drinks. We need to find out whether there is a habit of drinking milk at night or excessive milk, or liquids in the evening. The child is busy the whole day playing around, in the evening comes back and then consumes a lot of water. This also has to be differentiated from the excessive thirst, or a history of excessive thirst with a need to drink, which is also associated with weight loss or nausea, which will help us to differentiate diabetes in these children. And we also need to look at the growth and development, whether the child has been growing normally, because this is also common, or this may be seen in children with chronic kidney disease. Let me see if I'm missing out anything. Yes, we have to also address the sleep problems. We have to ask the mother whether the child has repeated respiratory infections, or does the child snore in the night, or has the child ever been diagnosed to have adenitis or enlarged tonsils. Behavioral issues, does the child sit in the class or has some attention deficit disorder? Is the child very hyperactive, or does the child suffer from low esteem or any depressive disorder? If they have come to you after taking some prior treatment, a detailed history of what therapy was given, what was the strategy, for how many months was it followed, and we should also try to find out why it didn't work. All this will help us determine what is wrong with the child, will help to rule out other causes of non-monosymptomatic or other comorbidities, which if treated will treat enuresis, and will also help us see how we can help the child. Coming to another very important history is the bedwetting diary or the voiding diary. Now, this bedwetting diary is a typical record of over 2 weeks of the voiding habits of the child, where we ask the mother to maintain a diary where the time of going to bed is recorded, the waking up time is recorded, and the mother has to note down whether that night has been a dry night or a wet night. The fluid intake in the day or night, she can't do this for 2 weeks, so we ask them to at least record the fluid or the volume intake throughout the day and night for 2 days at least, or in this period. The volume of urine passed, this too is recorded for 2 days, but the volume of urine passed during the day and the night, the total volume as well as the volume passed during each void, and the frequency or the time of passing urine is also recorded. If the child has a habit of diapers, and the volume cannot be collected, then the diaper weight before and after is recorded in the morning. Or if the child has sometimes passed onto the bed sheets, the bed sheet weight is also recorded. Bowel movements, whether the child has passed bowel daily. Now, we will all wonder, this is definitely an extensive record. Is it really important? Yes, it is. This record will itself tell us whether we are dealing with a child who is having nocturnal polyuria, or whether we are dealing with a child who has reduced bladder capacity, overactive bladder, or we are dealing with a child who has constipation. So this bedwetting diary, along with history, is itself enough for us to come to a fair diagnosis of where our child is and what help in the form of, and what therapy should we give to the child in order to overcome this habit. Now, for all of us in this digital world, today we are really digital. There are many apps which are available online, which will do this recording for you and help you in keeping this record. Moving on, like I said, history and the voiding diary is utmost important. Clinical examination generally is normal, and in clinical examination, we really need to only see the growth and development of the child. Sometimes in children, we really need to see the signs of occult spinal dysraphism, check for the spine, but mostly these children come with a history of continuous incontinence and not intermittent incontinence. If some mother is not able to give a history suggesting constipation, or we don't get a clear history, then we have to do a abdominal palpation to feel for fecal masses to rule out constipation. Investigations per se is not important, but a baseline urine analysis to rule out UTI and blood sugars to rule out diabetes can be done. This also says that urodynamic studies is per se not important or need not be done for the management of these children. Coming to the actual treatment. The first part of this treatment is counseling, and the most important part is counseling. Counseling is educating the parent. The counseling is educating the parent not only about what condition the child is going through, what is its, what are its, how to deal with it, and how will we come to a management. We have to tell these parents that this is a treatable condition. We have to tell them that they don't need to be guilty. It is not related with poor parenting or poor toilet training habits. We have to reassure them that this is a chronic illness. We may face failures, but eventually we can help the child overcome. And we should also tell them not to punish the child. Taking, we have to involve not only the child, we have to counsel the child, the parent, the grandparents, because again, this is a chronic issue, and only when we have the support and care of everyone in the family, the child will overcome this habit. This also says that by 6 years, we also have to tell the parents that by 6 years, if this issue has not been addressed, or it has not corrected spontaneously, it needs active treatment. The annual spontaneous remission rate of enuresis is 15%, but it may not be seen in all children, and we don't need to wait beyond the age of 6 years. Another thing that we could use when we are counseling these parents is the use of examples to tell the parents that this is very common. We can also tell them that the prevalence rate is 10 to 15%, which will make them feel that they are not alone struggling to cope with this disease. Now, here I've put up some famous personalities who had this habit of enuresis. We all know Samuel Jackson, Katy Perry, Vince Vaughn, even Whoopi Goldberg and Stephen King. I was trying to do some spying to see whether any of our Bollywood actors or personalities in India have, but I've been unsuccessful. I think I've been unsuccessful because of the embarrassment associated with this. So nobody really comes out and admits that they had this in childhood. Coming back to treatment, first we see in short about non-monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis. That is the condition where the child has even daytime enuresis. After assessing the voiding chart and the initial evaluation, like I told, if we treat the comorbidities like constipation, UTI, or sleep apnea, we are dealing with, we can treat the enuresis. So first and foremost, we treat any comorbidity that is associated with this enuresis. Now, sometimes these comorbidities have to be treated before treatment is begun, but sometimes when we are dealing with children with ADHD or psychiatric issues, we cannot do that before. So treatment of ADHD or such psychiatric comorbidities and nocturnal enuresis will run parallel and has to be done simultaneously. So coming to what are we going to treat, we have to treat, we have to tell, what are we going to tell the parents? We have to tell the child, tell the parents to instruct the child to have regular voiding habit. That is, to tell the child to pass at least urine 6 times in a day. The child has to be instructed to drink adequate amount of water in the morning and in the afternoon time. That is, around 80% of the daily water intake of the child has to be over by around 4 o'clock. And after 4 p.m. in the evening, the child should be allowed to have only 20% of the fluid intake. The child has to also, in terms of when we are suspecting small bladder capacity, when the child is awake during daytime, we should also sometimes tell the child to try and hold the urine in the bladder for a longer time. This will gradually lead to treatment of this small bladder capacity and also leads to treatment of hyperactive detrusor wall abnormality in these children. The voiding posture also has to be good. Now, these are all non-pharmacologic treatments. If with this success is not achieved, there is no evidence to delay specific antidiuretic therapy in these children. Coming to the initial treatment, there are two first-line therapies to treat monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis: the enuresis alarm and desmopressin. Whichever treatment we choose, either the enuresis alarm or desmopressin, the role of parents is extremely crucial. Let us see why. First, let me tell you about the enuresis alarm. The enuresis alarm is a device which gives a strong arousal stimulus, usually acoustic, to the child and the family at the moment when the child passes urine. So if you can just see this device, there is a sensor. This sensor is either attached to the undergarment of the child or is kept on the bed sheets. A cord running from the sensor goes up to the alarm, which is kept near the child's bed. When the sensor detects moisture or gets wet, it sends out an acoustic signal. It gets activated and the alarm rings. Now, this alarm wakes up the parent and the child, and the child is then taken to pass urine. When we are using this alarm, we have to tell the parents that we cannot expect the child to wake up in the initial few days or even weeks when the alarm rings. It is the parent who has to get involved, who has to wake the child and then take the child for passing urine. Now, here also, we have to tell the mother that her work is only to wake the child up. The child has to be woken up. The child has to be told that he needs to pass urine. The child has to be told to walk or is made to walk independently to the bathroom, open the door of the bathroom, switch on the light, undress himself, pass urine, flush, dress himself again, switch off the light and come back and sleep. This the child has to do. Many times I find mothers coming to me and telling, हमने तो किया पर वो बच्चा उठता ही नहीं है. Now, if you ask उठता क्यों नहीं है, because it is the mother who lifts up this child when the alarm rings and takes a sleeping child to the bathroom, makes the child pass urine, again gets him back to sleep. So here the brain is not aroused. This is another reason for failure of this alarm mechanism. Else the success rate of this alarm is 50 to 70%. This is the enuresis alarm. We can also use a very simple alarm clock. So the simple alarm clock also functions at the same interval that it sends in. We can ask the mother who says typically 3 baje susu karta hai. We can ask her to set an alarm for 2:30, wake the child, and then take the child to the bathroom. This interval of waking the child can be increased gradually, and this also has a success rate of 62 to 77%. Now, the alarm therapy, before we start the alarm therapy, there are some things that has to be adhered to. Like this alarm should be used only for well-motivated or well-informed families. The device should be thoroughly demonstrated. The alarm needs to be used continuously every night. Now, well-motivated is very important because imagine yourself, if you have to hear an alarm 2 times or 3 times every night, then go through the entire ordeal of waking the child, taking him to the bathroom, and then coming back and sleeping, again to be woken up in another 2 hours to again do the same thing. Very troublesome. Not everyone can do it. Also, say, आज तो मुझे अच्छा सोना है, मेरा कल presentation है, so I need a good night's sleep. So let me not use this alarm today. Let me just switch it off for a day. That doesn't work. The alarm needs to be used continuously. Also, some practicalities while using the alarm has to be taken into consideration. Like if it is a family of 5 or 6 or grandparents in a small room, the alarm would typically arouse and wake everyone up. So an alarm cannot be used under that condition. Now, parents need to be prepared to wake the child. I've already come to that. If no progress is seen after 6 weeks of therapy, the therapy should be stopped. But if there is progress, then this should be continued for 14 consecutive dry nights, and then we can start tapering the treatment. So, a combination therapy, the success rates of the alarm is 70%. Combination therapy with enuresis alarm, bladder training, I've spoken before, dry bed training, motivational therapy, and pelvic floor exercises is successful in 87% of patients. And there is also an improved functional capacity of the bladder, which increases from 53% to 88%. So this is in short how the bladder works. So the alarm, how the alarm works, the alarm just conditions the brain to receive impulse from a full bladder. So when the brain is conditioned, the child wakes up and we can overcome this habit. For all those of you, this alarm is very much available in India. This is a snapshot from Amazon, which there are many other sites which give this alarm, and various other versions of the enuresis alarm is also available. Like I said, motivation is of utmost importance. Alarm cannot be used by parents or child who are ready to kill the alarm but are not ready to kill this habit, because it has significant limitations like parental involvement, it is sleep disturbance and stress to both child and family. Moving on to the pharmacologic treatment, the most important drug in this treatment is desmopressin. Why? Because desmopressin is a synthetic analog of the pituitary hormone arginine vasopressin. And we have already seen that the lack of arginine vasopressin is the main cause of enuresis in 75% of the cases. We have already gone through of how it works. So desmopressin also has the same, that it reabsorbs urine and thus less urine is produced. The response rate to desmopressin therapy is 60 to 70% and it is generally well tolerated. Typically one-third children who are put on desmopressin treatment are dry as long as they take the drug. One-third show no benefit and one-third have intermediate response. The side effects are rare, hence it can be used for long term. There are studies which have very safely used desmopressin for 2 years in children and found that it does not really come with any major side effect. Now, the chance of response is highest in children who have monosymptomatic nocturnal inuria and normal daytime voided volumes. Coming to the recommendations for use of desmopressin, desmopressin is available in the tablet form in 0.1 mg and 0.2 mg. It is also available in the lyophilized form, 120 microgram and 240. In India, we have only the 120 microgram which is available. The lyophilized form is more preferred than the tablet form. One, because it is easy to administer in a child. It has more predictable pharmacokinetics, hence it has greater reduction or greater response to treatment. The tablet form interferes with the meal, whereas the lyophilized does not. The timing of administration is important. That is, the tablet has to be administered 1 hour before bedtime and 2 hours after the evening meal. This 2 hours gap after the evening meal is more so for the tablet form and not so much for the lyophilized form. Coming to the most important thing that the parent has to be educated, the child has to be told, is that there needs to be fluid restriction 1 hour before taking desmopressin and 8 hours consequently. For obvious reasons, because its action is to reabsorb water. So if excess fluid intake is taken in that time period, the child will land up with water intoxication, which will lead to hyponatremia, and all other side effects of hyponatremia can be seen. So coming to the do's and don'ts. So let's see the don'ts first. That we should instruct the child not to drink excess of fluid in the night. We should also educate the child that what are the danger signs that they need to look out for if hyponatremia develops. We need to tell them that they should not use this tablet if the child is suffering from loose motions, fever, or infection. It is not to be used in children below 5 years of age, and not to stop the treatment abruptly. I'll come to that point. Coming to the do's, again, avoiding diary is extremely important, which will help the pediatrician assess the efficacy of treatment or how the treatment has been going on and the response to the treatment. We should also tell them to consult the doctor in case of any untoward symptom. We should encourage the child to have enough water and fluid intake during the day to prevent dehydration. And we should also follow structured withdrawal. Coming to this point of stopping the treatment abruptly, there are various studies which show that structured withdrawal of the desmopressin has lower chances of reduces the chances of relapses. So when we start the treatment as one tablet at bedtime for these children every single night. This is generally given for a period of 6 weeks to 3 months. Generally 3 months is followed. And then once that is over, we start tapering it to every alternate day for a period of 2 weeks, then twice a week for 2 weeks, and then once a week for another 2 weeks. The response to desmopressin is immediate. In fact, we can also give it to children who come to you a day prior and they say they need to go for a family function. So if you give desmopressin, the response is immediate. So even though you have achieved dry nights, we cannot stop this abruptly. We have to taper it. Also, there is an entity and a study called as overtraining the bladder. So once the treatment has been withdrawn and stopped, the bladder is overtrained. That is, the child is instructed after stopping desmopressin treatment to drink lots of water at bedtime, and then we see whether relapse happens. If the child has not relapsed, even when we are overtraining the bladder, the chances of relapse is extremely low. For those children, the 1/3% who didn't respond or had intermediate response, the Canadian Enuretic Society has a study which shows that 75% of children eventually responded to desmopressin if treated for a long time. And desmopressin also has reduced, if you just check this, the number of wet nights has reduces from 5.7 to literally 1 and during the course of treatment. In short, about the other drugs which are used are anticholinergic drugs. The main drug which is used is oxybutynin. In fact, only oxybutynin is available for off-label use or for label use in children. It is a second-line treatment of anti-enuresis. It is generally given in combination as add-on for desmopressin. It is given in children who have an overactive detrusor muscle problem or has low bladder capacity. For obvious reason, it's an anticholinergic, so it will help these children. Now, when we are giving these anticholinergic, we also need to address the side effects. That is constipation, because it leads to relaxation of the smooth muscles. So constipation, it has to be ruled out or treated before starting anticholinergic treatment. There should be no UTI. The child, because residual volume, the post-void volume or the post-void residual volume needs to be checked at 3 months interval when the child is on treatment with oxybutynin. Dry mouth, so oral hygiene has to be explained so that we avoid the risk of caries and visits to a dentist. Imipramine initially was used, but now is considered as a third-line alternative. It is used only by specialists in very limited cases, especially in adults or teenage children who also have associated hyperactivity or other comorbidities. The side effect of imipramine, that is, it has cardiotoxicity. So a baseline ECG is important before we get on to the treatment of, we start treatment with imipramine. But there are many people who say that to treat a condition like nocturnal enuresis, we don't need to take the risk of cardiotoxicity and even fatal side effects of treating with imipramine. So this should only be left in the hands of specialists. Okay. Now, no treatment is incomplete without coming to diet. I have mothers, कुछ भी हो, fever हो, loose motion हो, कुछ भी लाना है. So here also you will be faced with this question कि हमें इस condition में हमारे बच्चे को क्या खिलाना है और क्या नहीं खिलाना है. So One, we have to tell the mother that the fluid intake has to be more during the day, and in the evening, even fluids has to be avoided. Even water has to be given in restricted amount. Milk is to be avoided in the evening, yogurt and cheese. This also because it is high in calcium, and high calcium diets have seen to increase enuresis, or there are studies where it has led to relapses or treatment failures if the child is has a high calcium diet. What is definitely not recommended is salt, chocolates, coca, tea, coffee, or other carbonated drinks. This is because the level of caffeine will stimulate the bladder and lead to enuresis. Okay, so now when we come to the treatment in enuresis, what is important is from the history and from the bladder, the voiding diary, we have to see what treatment is suitable for our patient and then advocate that treatment. Coming to the last slide, I think everybody has heard enough. Let's have some take-home messages. The take-home messages, which is very essential, is enuresis is common, and it is our responsibility as pediatricians to actively inquire about bedwetting in patients. Let it be fever patients, let it be parents of hyperactive children, let it be constipations. Let us make it a habit to ask whether the child has a habit of bedwetting. I'm sure we will come up with more parents saying yes, and we can address this issue at a younger age and have more success rates if we do so. What is important in bedwetting is counseling, because it is a chronic illness. Counseling involving the entire family is very important. History and the voiding diary, a detailed voiding diary is very important. And like I said, the treatment, whether you're going to give a non-pharmacologic treatment, whether you're going to advise the alarm, whether you're going to give desmopressin, depends on the history and the voiding diary, and a tailor-made approach and treatment is required. Okay, so now let me leave you all on a very positive note. I've spoken about a lot of guilt, helplessness with enuresis. Now let me come to a very positive and in fact a partially true story. This is a movie, The Loneliest Runner, which was released in 1976 with Michael Landon as the main character, the actor in this movie. This is an autobiographical depiction of his real life. He was a bedwetter till 14 years of age, and his mother, out of helplessness of not knowing how to help, how to treat this, had a habit of displaying, if you can see here, displaying his soiled bedsheet from the balcony for others in the neighborhood and his friends to see, hoping desperately that the child would then leave this habit. Now, it had an adverse effect. He would then run from school every evening and run home to first go and remove this bedsheet before his other friends would see and come to know about his bedwetting habit. Eventually, running every day made him realize that he loved running. And in this movie, it has been shown that he then goes on to become an Olympic runner. But in actual life, he becomes a US Olympic javelin thrower and who leaves that and then comes back to acting. So this is a very positive way of taking bedwetting. And so not everything is negative about bedwetting. Coming to say thank you. With this, I end, but I also say that the theme for this year's Bedwetting Day is time to take action. So I hope from this talk of mine, we all take action and help our little tiny tots relieve the burden of the huge Govardhan Parvat. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because we see that enlarged tonsil and enlarged adenoid leads to sleep apnea or leads to snoring. These children are poor sleepers. So, like I said, if you have to ask the impulse, they have the incidence of sleep apnea is higher in these children. So, the brain typically does not perceive the impulse of a full bladder in these children. So, enuresis is common. And there is a study which has shown that if these children who have adenotonsillectomy and enuresis, if they undergo who have adenotonsillitis and enuresis, if they undergo adenotonsillectomy, 50% of these children I hope I've cleared the doubt. Like I've said, if the brain asks, सांस लेने के लिए उठूं कि सुसु के लिए उठूं, so it is obviously the brain will prefer सांस लेने के लिए उठना.
There was one question where these alarms are available. You said it is available on YouTube. Sorry.
On Amazon, and there are many other portals. It is available.
Around 1,500 rupees, right?
Yeah. No, there are various versions and many types of alarms which are available. So it is not that it is not available in India, though we don't really use the enuresis alarm. Most of us do use alarm therapy, which is by a simple alarm.
Shankar wants to ask, is there any role of oxybutynin in the therapy?
Yes, oxybutynin is a second-line therapy, anti-enuretic therapy. It's used in children with non-monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis. It is an anticholinergic, so it helps relax the bladder wall. So it is used in cases where there is an overactive bladder wall or the bladder wall capacity is low. It is generally used as an add-on therapy to desmopressin in the children with non-monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis.
Yeah. Anyone wants to ask the question?
Yeah, I want to ask one question about the nasal spray desmopressin. Whether it is more useful to use nasal spray or is it tablet?
Yeah, it is nasal spray was used many years back, but the pharmacokinetics of the nasal spray is not really well understood, or the pharmacokinetics is very erratic. Hence, it has led to the side effect of hyponatremia and water intoxication was seen more in when you use a nasal spray. So, nasal spray is no longer used in the treatment of enuresis. It is only for people having diabetes insipidus, and it is not used in children with nocturnal enuresis.
Any more questions?
Vikram? Okay.
It was a very, it was a very nice lecture, I can say. And of course, that nasal spray was used initially, but they have discontinued the production of nasal spray now because the absorption is erratic. So the response is not proper. Sometimes it acts fast, sometimes it doesn't act fast. Probably it was useful when you want to use it for a very short time, like a child is going to some picnic, or there is a marriage in the house or something. For then 1 or 2 days, you can use it. But then there were more complications following nasal spray. I used to use nasal spray initially, but I have also stopped using nasal spray. Best thing is measuring the bladder capacity and what is the urine quantity in the night. That is the best method, because you have to calculate the bladder capacity. If it is more than 130% of the bladder capacity, that means you are having nocturnal polyuria. So you know that these are the patients who are going to get more benefited by tablet mineral. So that is the best method. And if you feel that the bladder capacity is much less than expected, then these are the patients who are having hyperactive detrusor. And there, these tablets may not help, where there the oxybutynin will help more. So that is in short that. Plus, of course, you have to check and do so many other things, thinking whether it is a behavioral problem or what. If it is a behavioral problem or ADHD or something, you have to treat that also simultaneously. Also, where adenoid enlargement or whatever comorbidities are there, you should think from that angle also. But best thing is to maintain a bladder diving. That gives us a much better, and we will also get confidence that yes, this method is going to work in this patient because there is a nocturnal possibility.
I think before we end, I would really like to thank Muralva sir for guiding me on this topic and for helping me. I would like to thank Jitendra sir for giving me this opportunity to talk, and all my friends from the Navi Mumbai IIP family who sent a lot of best of luck messages, which was very encouraging. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all delegates. On behalf of Navi Mumbai IIP, I thank each and every one of you for joining this meeting and being a part of inaugural ceremony of our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you.